you make time for what you want to make time for. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep. No, you don't have to sugarcoat that with me. I'm very familiar with that. And that's, right now it's the kids, and I'm realizing, man, how fast they're growing. And, one just had her last day of high school today. And so she's
What?
had all
Really?
yeah. So she's had all these lasts over the last couple of weeks. She had her prom, and she had her last soccer game there a couple months ago. And
Yeah.
now she's getting ready for graduation and all these things. And she turned 18 last week. And so it's like, oh my gosh. And so
Well,
I'm glad I prioritized the way I have, but there's a lot left I'd like to do.
Well, so here's the thing with your oldest getting ready to be on her own, but not on her own. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's going to free up a little bit of time. It'll end up freeing up more time than you think. Trust me, it will. You'll still be busy, but it'll free up time. It's less you have to worry about because of the age of your child. You know what I'm saying? They don't depend on you as much. How old's your youngest, man?
She's 14. Actually, she's 13. She'll be 14 in October. So
okay.
My middle one just turned 16 yesterday. So yeah, 18, 16, almost 14, all girls. So yeah.
How are you surviving in life? That's got to be rough.
Honestly, when I started having them kids, I wasn't I wasn't a Christian at all, and didn't even know if I believed in God. And all that has changed over the course of my adult life. But it's God's way of building me into the person that I was supposed to be, because I was such a naturally insensitive dude, like not necessarily mean, although people in my younger life, a lot of them say I was an asshole, but
dude, I've known you vicariously off and on for 15 years, if not longer. You've never been mean.
Yeah, well, that's as I evolved a lot.
Okay.
As you kind of got to watching my stuff and me through social media. But anyways, I was such an insensitive person. I had and I still battle ego today. Pride and ego was something that
we all do. It ain't just you, buddy.
Yeah. And so I always fought my ego really bad. So having to navigate life with 3 little girls and a wife really changed. Yeah, well, it did, and it taught me a lot, because one thing that I refused to fail at was being a daddy. Like, that's my whole world, and that's one thing that I was going to learn how to do right no matter what. And so I had to do a lot of change and a lot of soul searching. So, having to learn how to be sensitive and compassionate and graceful and all those things that when I was 20 I thought were for sissies, made me a much better person, and help me evolve and help my career path. I work for a big corporation now that I could have never been in that setting without having went through raising those girls and evolving as a man. So we all joke about having girls. You have girls, and we all joke about it and how tough it is. But man, they're awesome. They're loving. They're caring. I've learned a lot from my girls. So it's all perspective, how you look at it, I guess.
One thing that I've learned from the outside looking in, or the inside looking out, I have, my kids, but like, I visualize other people with their kids, and I realize a man learns more about being a man raising a daughter than he does a son. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me, because I would say I would say the same thing. And when you realize that if you have a good relationship with your children, you realize at some point in time that no matter how you see it, you are the man in their life, right? So you are the single example of what that should look like, and what a man in a girl or woman's life should look like. And when you start realizing that, and you start thinking about, okay, so how I interact with this little girl is teaching her exactly, in her mind, what she thinks is how a man is supposed to interact with them, right?
Yep.
So if I'm insensitive and I'm dropping that hammer and I'm not caring about her feelings and I'm raising my voice at her and degrading her and talking down to her, then she's going to think that that's normal because I'm her Superman. I'm the biggest example of what a man's supposed to be. And they're so
Yep.
impressionable when they're young. And I learned that. And I actually had a conversation with a coworker and we talked about that years ago. And I cried because I realized that I wasn't doing everything right. And that I always have had a great relationship with my wife and was always very mindful about how I interacted with her in front of them because I knew that they were watching that, right? And
Yeah.
but with my interactions with them, I'm still a stern father, but my interactions with them, I knew I needed to change a little bit, and thankfully I learned that early enough that now I pride myself in at least trying to set that great example of how their interactions with men should look like, right? Because I realized that if I interact with them in a way that if someone else was to do that, would I get mad or not?
That's
Right.
the way you got
So
to look at it. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. It's humbling though, because if you're really truthful with yourself, you realize that you're not perfect at that. So I try to think about, okay, if some other dude talked to my daughter like I just did, or did whatever, would it make me mad? If it would upset me, then I know I need to change how I approach that interaction, right? And
Yeah.
that helped me a lot with them because you really start to think, if somebody else talked to her like that, how would I feel inside? And you, as a father, how somebody is crooked with one of your kids or your wife, how you would feel about that. So
Yeah, we don't have to say how we would be, but we know each other. We know how we would be. For
yeah,
me, the way I look at being a parent, man, is our job as a parent is to give our kids what we didn't receive. Now, when I say that, I don't say that in response to saying your parents were bad people or my parents were bad people. You know, but again, our parents is to give our kids what we didn't receive as children. If there's any generational whatever things are running in the family, it is our duty, our jobs to try to break those, to change. You know what I'm saying? So the thing for me that I focus on with my youngest man is, I remember growing up, and me and my father's relationship was the furthest from the best. We just recently got good, and I'm thankful for that. But
awesome.
I never wanted to be the strict parent where like you have to be certain things. You call me bro, homie, I don't care. As long as it ain't a cuss word, you call me whatever you want. I want to have that friend, open relationship, with my youngest, and she knows that. She knows what to say and what not to say. I'm thankful for that. Knock on wood, but that's how I look at it. What's your thoughts on that as far as what I said about our jobs as parents is to give our kids what we didn't receive?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't guess I've really ever thought about it that deep. I'm a little on the other end of the spectrum. However, I value making
Mm-hmm.
them feel safe enough
Right.
to have that open relationship, which my wife and I, thankfully, so far have been successful with. Our kids tell us stuff that honestly is uncomfortable at times, but we have to ignore that to keep that line of communication open. But my wife is much more lenient and friendly with them, and I'm kind of more of the disciplinary. It's not really good cop, bad cop. We're not that different. I love
Yeah.
the fact of trying to find that middle line of being that authoritative figure, but making them feel so comfortable, like that friend figure, like you're seeking. And I think a lot of that, and that's why, like a lot of people have asked me for advice with raising girls and stuff like that, because just going through it, I'm very cautious to give parental advice because there's too many variables, and everybody's situation is so different. The dynamic of a family is
Yeah.
so big that I don't feel like I'm just a dude raising kids. Like
Yeah.
I'm not highly
Yeah.
educated, so I feel kind of funny sometimes giving advice, but I will to my friends and stuff. And I think you just have to kind of look at your situation. So my background, I had a great relationship with my mom and dad, and they were definitely not friends to me growing up, and but we had a good relationship, so I didn't have that negative view of how I was raised as you did with a bad relationship with your father. And maybe that's what kind of drug me one way and you kind of toward the
Yeah.
other way. But that,
I believe I believe you're right on that. Yeah, I have to agree with that.
But there's so many right ways to do it and so many wrong ways to do it,
For sure.
and who, it's I think at the end of the day, your intent and what you're doing. And Pete, we get a lot of comments because we've been blessed, and as teenagers, our girls so far have been behaving, and they all have great grades. They're all super involved, and so we get a lot of such positive feedback. And people say, "Oh, you all are such great parents," and I'm like, "Well, we got really lucky. Like how we lead does have a little bit to do with how they're turning out. But I know a lot of people that were really great parents, and their kids were just shitheads. Like there's just there's just something there, that you can do a great job, and things don't always work out. But
For sure. No, that's definitely the case. So I want to get into the whole sobriety thing before we get back into being a parent.
Yeah.
At what point in time in your life did you realize you had to fucking change?
Probably somewhere around 36. So a little background on that. I was always the social drinker, started too early. And then by early 20s, if I was hanging out or chilling with people, we was drinking. And by the time I think I was 33 or 34 when I transitioned from construction to an office setting job with this company with a different type of stress. At the same time, my kids were little, super involved. It was entering, a tough part of life. And that's when I really started probably drinking too much, was around 34. And like anything else, it evolved. So I went from, only drinking when I went out with buddies on the weekends to now I'm home all the time with the kids and a stressful job. And so a couple nights a week, you would drink down wine while you was cooking dinner or something like that. And it evolved from there. By the time I was 36, with a little help of my wife, I started realizing, I'm really doing this too much. So I obviously didn't make a change at 36, but that's when I first noticed.
Definitely. So would you say it was alcohol that was your biggest addiction when it comes to or alcohol, or was it something else?
No, for me, it's only alcohol. I've never been a drug user, never smoked, none of that stuff. So for me, it was the alcohol. And what I learned, what I didn't realize for a long time is there was some anxiety issues there,
Yeah.
and some stress issues, and minor depression issues. And I was using alcohol for medicine. That was my coping mechanism. I just didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
And see, for me, why that's such a dangerous path is alcoholism. And I've talked about this on my TikTok some, but alcoholism runs rampant in both sides of my family, my mother's side and my father's side.
Yes.
And it's ruined lives, multiple lives on both sides, close branches of the tree to me. And I thought I was invincible from that. There's that ego and pride thing. Never thought that would get me. But it's killed people in both sides of my family. And so, I had kind of worst case scenario set up for that to happen to me. And I was too dumb to realize it and try to prevent it.
Yeah. But so for me, it wasn't just alcohol for me. I never did other stuff that big, but I remember back when I was probably 22, man. I like to hang out with Rick James, if you get what I'm saying, a little too much.
Yeah.
And I was at a bar that everybody knows, and you probably know which bar I'm talking about. I ain't gonna put it out there, but I used to play music at this bar for about a year and a half with a couple other guys, and it got to the point, man, where I would line my inner lip, and then it got to the point where I wouldn't, and I started gnawing at the skin.
Yeah.
Is Jonesing that bad? That's awful.
And
You know?
that's, dude, it's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And you, even if you realize you're progressing the wrong way, you don't realize how big of a problem it is until whatever that wake up
Exactly.
call is for you.
Yeah.
That was yours. For me, so many people, I consider myself so fortunate. One of the reasons why I'm so transparent and actually do speak about my stuff is because I'm so blessed that I caught mine before I had that rock bottom addiction moment, right?
You're
Like I
lucky.
didn't.
That's good.
I am, and I recognize how valuable that could be. And so the reason why I like to do stuff like this, like talking to you about it and getting it
Yeah.
out there, is so hopefully if somebody's maybe thinking about that they may be having an issue or something, they can, maybe if I just help one person turn that light bulb on before it gets too bad for them, then it's worth putting my story out there. Because I didn't have to crash a car. I didn't have to lose a wife. I didn't have to hurt anybody by accident. I didn't have to lose my job for me to realize that I had a legitimate problem. And I was so fortunate to be able to grab a hold of it and take care of it when I did. And I value that. I'm thankful for that. And so it could have ended up so much worse. And the trend was showing over the last 8 years of my life that it was getting worse month by month, year by year. And I was going to end up in a dark place if I hadn't recognized it. And I honestly owe a lot of that to my wife because, she's the person that was with me every day. And she was extremely patient with me because that's just how things go in relationships. But she also was worried enough about seeing the progression of it, knowing the history of my family, and seeing that even though I wasn't super mean, I didn't come home, kick the dog, I didn't yell at the kids and stuff like that you hear about a lot of folks that drink.
You do hear about that from people, yes.
Yeah, and I wasn't that guy, which is part of what led my problem to progress so far, is because it was easy for me to justify it with myself. Hey, I don't do those things. It's really not a problem. But she saw where it was going and was she had the balls enough to step up and say, "Look, dude, you got to do something with this because I see the difference in you, and I know you don't think it's bad right now, but it's gotten worse, and I don't like where it's probably going to go, and I'm not going to put up with it." And hearing that one time didn't fix it. I wish it would, because I would have liked to think I would have respected her a lot more in that moment. But in the moment, I knew I had a problem, so it wasn't full face denial, but it was still, it was tough to make the changes I needed to do.
Now, when you say about crashing a car, that made me think about a very serious moment in my life. So 2 weeks after my grandmother, my father's mom, passed away, I went out to the bars. I'm trying to remember what's the not Stooges, the one that used to be on Dixie, the old pizza place. Starts with a S. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's the one that Larry used to run.
It wasn't Spinelli's, was it? They had one of them for a while. They had
but it starts with an S. Shooters. Was it? No.
Shooters.
Was it?
No.
Shoot. No.
That wasn't on Dixie, I don't think.
No. Well, it was. I left that place, and I was inebriated, and I wore the suit that I wore to my grandma's funeral, and then I met up with my buddy Tony at the bar that I was talking about earlier, and I gave him my keys. I was like, "Man, just take my keys. Whatever you do, don't let me drive." So we're partying, long story short, me and him almost fist fought over my keys, and he threw them on the ground and said, you're on your own. So I leave there, I go to another house, and it's about 5 a.m. And I leave this house, and I remember coming to the stop sign. I go to make a right turn, make too wide of a turn, deer in headlights, run over a fire hydrant, all kinds of stuff. Long story short, I broke my neck in the car wreck. I got T-bone, broke my neck, got thrown from the driver's seat to the back passenger seat. They had to cut the car open. My head and my hand hits the windshield too, and I got 10 stitches on that hand, and I had to wear a neck and a half, 8 months straight, 23 and a half hours a day, 7 days a week, and I got hit with a DUI. So
that's a bad day.
that didn't stop me then, though. You would have
Ain't
think
that
that it
crazy?
would. You would
Isn't that
think
crazy?
that would have stopped me. And it's crazy that I can laugh about it, but looking at my growth, I can laugh at certain things that normal people wouldn't be able to. It's
I think that shows some confidence that you have in yourself,
Yeah.
of the person you are now. So I again, I recognize how lucky that I was. So I never got to where I was driving around like that. Now I would have, maybe stop and grab something at a liquor store, mix it in a fountain drink on my way home from work. So I get that one in me before I get home, but not enough to make you to start messing with you yet. Or most of the time, because my kids are so involved in sports and stuff, they would have practices, and so most of the time I wouldn't start until after we got them home and stuff. For whatever reason, luckily I was really good about that stuff. But that doesn't mean I was always going to be that good about it. And I did some dumb stuff that are red flags that you have a problem, just like that stopping to have one on the way home, just to get a little bit in you to help. I would come home, and I would get home after my wife and kids were home. So here I am, stressed from my work day that I wasn't handling right. And I come home, and they all hit me at the door. They're happy to see me. They want to tell me about their day. Well, in my mind, if I didn't have just a little bit of that drink on the way home to chill out, like, I couldn't handle that. And so I wasn't engaged in those stories and those conversations the way I wanted to be. So in my mind, I would twist that up to where, hey, I need this to be the good father. And I learned a lot when I decided that I knew I had a problem. I studied alcoholism. Just, I say study. I didn't go to school. I watched YouTube videos and stuff.
You still learn.
Yeah. And so I learned a lot about alcohol, how it works in your brain and all that stuff for about a year before I actually quit. And one of the things that now it makes perfect sense, and I feel like that I knew it before, but I had to hear it in a video for whatever reason, as crazy as that sounds, and it hit me like a brick wall, was, alcohol is a depressant, right? So alcohol is a downer. And once your body gets used to having that, you're not drinking for that buzz anymore. You're drinking to feel like a sober person feels, right? So your body chemically starts craving this substance. You haven't had it for a while. Your body thinks that, hey, I need this. And so it starts making you feel weird or bad. And you would think that you're feeling that anxiety and that stress, when really you're in withdrawal, and your body's telling you, hey, give me that substance. And so then I would drink, right? And as my problem progressed, I would feel that way more frequently. Those feelings would be worse, right? Those cravings. And as this was progressing, I didn't realize that this whole time I'm drinking to pacify my stress and anxiety, but my drinking is causing my stress and anxiety.
Double-edged sword.
So I'm in this circle, bro. Like, I'm in this circle that I can't get out of, and I'm making worse without even realizing it. And when it was laid out in a video, and I'm sure it was laid out much better than how I just laid it out now, but it made me realize, wait a minute, that phrase of you're drinking to feel like a normal person feels. You're not drinking for that buzz anymore. When you're 20 and you go out with your buddies and you're slamming beers or shots or whatever, and you get that buzz, and that buzz feels good, right? That's what everybody wants to do, and it feels good. And so you do that. But once you're drinking 3 or 4 times a week, man, that's not what you're feeling anymore. Now you feel the relief. Your body feels relief. But it's really not a buzz. It's just starting to bring itself back to that normal feeling, and it calms you down. But all the time, it's making your problems worse. You don't even realize it. So that was kind of a profound thing for me to learn during the process of me wanting to knock that problem out.
So let's go to the day that you officially realized, because we've talked about stuff, your realizations about problem you had previously with alcoholism and stuff like that, where was you at exactly when you told yourself, whether you looked in the mirror or not, where you said, fuck it, I'm done? Where were you at and what were you doing?
So this was in December of 21 when I finally said I've had enough, and I was actually had gotten up. It was a Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night we had went to a bowling alley for my wife's side of the family. I think it was one of my nieces or nephews' birthday parties, and I got a whole slew of them kids in my family. So we were at the bowling alley, and of course, at the bowling alley, heck, every few minutes I'm going up to the bar to get me some drinks and having a good time. And it was right in the peak. So how this worked for me is my wife would go through seasons of where she was much more patient with me and tolerable of drinking, and then finally, every month or 2 months, she'd just had enough, and it would be on her nerves, and so she would kind of get down on me. Hey, what's going on? You got to do something about this. So we were in one of those seasons, and she was pretty rough on me that Saturday night about drinking, and really get after me about it. And I had tried probably 3 or 4 times over the course of the last year to cut back to a tolerable amount. I would say, all right, I'm only going to drink on weekends. And for me, unfortunately, that's just not how my relationship with alcohol worked. So I couldn't just occasionally drink, right? It would always end up, I'd blink 2 weeks later, I'm drinking every night again. So that wasn't going to work. And I woke up this Sunday morning and I thought, it's not working. It's still getting worse. It's causing heat between me and the most important person to me, in the world. The one person that's got my back no matter what is telling me that she's had enough. And I've disrespected that a couple times in the past. My kids are getting older.
Mm-hmm.
I was. This is crazy. We can get into this in a minute, but I was such a highly functioning alcoholic. My teenage kids. I'm not talking about little kids. I'm talking about my teenage kids that didn't know I drank. And so it's a cool part of my story we can talk about later. But so I knew that the point of them finding out, kind of what Dad was up to was coming. And I was at that time already big on being the good example for them. I knew things were going to start getting more rocky. And I just said, look, I woke up that Sunday. I didn't really get hungover anymore because I drank so often. So I was, it wasn't that I was hungover and thought, man, I can't do this no more. It was, there was another night of my wife going to bed mad at me that I'll never get back. And I'm tired of putting her in that situation. I'm tired of making her feel like I don't care about her enough to fix a problem. And I'm scared of where this is actually taking me. And I think it was really hard for me as this alpha dude to admit, dude, this is starting to scare me a little bit. I'm out of control. It hurt my ego. It hurt my pride. This thing had me, right? And so I woke up that morning. It was December 5th of 21, man, and it was a Sunday. Sunday was a big drinking day for me. Like I had all day, work out in the shop and drink. And I said, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink today. I don't know how long I can do this, but I'm starting today. I'm not going to do it. And a couple hours into the day, with a lot of thinking about that and her still being mad about, mad at me, I thought, I'm going to have to do this and not drink at all. Like it's not, I don't know how many days I'm going to go. I'm done. And that's when it was born, man, December 5th, 2021.
Good for you, man. Good for you, man. That's awesome. Looking back, do you think that you can make that change? Because I know you've talked about it, how you've always said you wanted to, you would tell yourself you're going to or whatever. But looking back at it now and the growth you've had, did you ever truly think you would say, fuck it, and that's it?
No, I was, one of the things that kept me from actually doing it for probably 2 years was fear of failure. I didn't want to, and here's why I was scared to fail. I was afraid that if I really said in my mind, I'm going to quit drinking, right?
Yeah.
That's a black and white. That's a line that you have to cross. I was afraid if I crossed that line, put my heart and soul into quitting and failed, that I would never be able to quit after that, ever. Like knowing that I tried my best and failed, I was afraid would break me and I would never
Right.
be able to do it. And so it kept me from trying it. That fear of of failure kept me from trying it. And I had to put a lot of faith in my inner self. I had to put a lot of faith in my wife being there. And something that I haven't talked about publicly ever before is I had a very, very profound spiritual encounter on day two that I, right now at least, praise all of my success with sobriety with that moment. And that moment brings me a little guilt because my road to sobriety now, over 500 days. I don't know the exact day anymore, but I owe it all to that moment, and I feel bad that my road has been as smooth and easy as it's been. But yeah,
Yeah. So for me, December 21, was the last time I smoked, and it's been October of last year since the last time I hung out with Rick James, and I just, you know, where was I at in February? I went somewhere to a massive party for Super Bowl, and I knew I was going to be around people that were hanging out with Rick. And I told myself, I don't know what made me do this, but I said, God, whoever's up there, I'm gonna give you my word that I'm not gonna do it. If I give you my word and I don't do it, just look out for me. That's all I ask. And then flash forward, Super Bowl happens. Don't hang out with Rick. You know what I'm saying? And March, I get blessed with the opportunity to go to the NFL draft combine. I was like, shit, all right. I was like, so all I gotta do is be a man of myself and keep my word and things will happen. And then flash forward a month after that, I fly to Kansas City and do what I could at the NFL draft. So I'm like, well, shit, all I gotta do is be a man of my word and I get blessed. I'm like, that's all. I know I laugh because as easy as it sounds to be a man of your word, it's in certain situations in life when you have issues, it's not as easy as some would think. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's
it
pretty
can be
yeah,
tough. And
yeah.
I don't know where you are in your journey with your faith, and I don't get into that super
No, we
deep
could talk about.
with
Hey,
people, but
I'll tell you right now. Do I go to church? Absolutely not. However, do I send my youngest to Catholic school? Absolutely. That's where I went. Do I believe in God and higher power? 110%. Do I have conversations? Absolutely. I just view certain things that in order to have a relationship with God and believe in God, I don't feel like you have to go to church 24/7. You know what I'm saying?
yep.
Some agree with it, some don't. It is what it is, but that's my thoughts on it. Sorry, I had to stop you on that.
No, you're good. I value, your opinion. I value everybody's opinion on it. Quick background on my spiritual journey is I wasn't raised super religious. When I did go to church as a kid, it was either a Baptist church or a Catholic church. Both of them freaked me out as a kid. I didn't like them. And I got to where this whole thing was hard for me to understand and believe in, and so I questioned everything. And I'm going to make this the very short version of this. By the time I hit my early 20s, I didn't think I believed in God, but I wanted to, and I still even prayed, even though I would tell you I didn't believe in God. And as we started to raise our kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to want them to have a real relationship with God. It made me think, well, how could you want that if you don't have that or need
Yeah.
that? And we put them in Catholic schools, and I fully supported that. My wife grew up Catholic, but I still didn't like the church and all that. Well, as I seeked more answers and tried to be more open-minded, I didn't even know about just regular Christianity. I thought you had to be like Catholic or Baptist, and that's the only churches I'd been to, and so there's a lot to my story. But I started feeling these little tugs that had me do things that were at the time out of my character, that I couldn't really explain why I would do or why I would say or why I would
Yeah.
interact with a person. And I started recognizing them, and it made me more hungry to chase that faith. Long story short, I was baptized, I think that's been about 4 years ago, and accepted the Lord into my life. I had been going to a church for a little while, and growing in my faith. And it was an awesome relationship builder with my kids at their
Hmm.
ages. And I felt like I was leading by a better example. So everything in my life was starting to get better. I still had this drinking problem. I was still at the worst shape of my life, 100 pounds overweight. So still had all these things to work on. But that growing in that faith is kind of the first domino that fell that started this really huge self-improvement journey that I've been on. And I prayed a lot about the alcohol, and really wasn't getting a lot of response, and wasn't
Yeah.
feeling like I was getting a lot of help for it.
Mhm.
And I made that decision on Sunday, December 5th. It was a tough decision, a tough day, scared, really, really scared of failure. Went to bed on day 2, December 6th, and was praying. And the praying was a little different. I usually pray quiet. I don't pray out loud. It's usually just, me there. And I was laying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, and I started praying, and I started talking. I was praying out loud, and I was praying to God that it's still kind of crazy for me to think about the way this felt, but I was praying to God, and I told God, I said, God, listen, I can't do this on my own. I've tried to cut back. I failed. I need help in this. I realize I have a problem. I realize that I don't have control over this, and I desperately, for my family and the rest of my life, want to defeat this. I am 100% giving myself to you right now, and asking for the strength and the guidance
Yeah.
to win this thing. And man, as I'm wrapping this prayer up, and if you haven't ever experienced something like this, you're not going to understand it. But as I'm wrapping this prayer up, I got this jolt through me. Have you ever had a fever, like a really severe fever, and you've got them uncontrollable shakes,
Sucks.
and they get real bad, and you're like, I can't stop shaking. So
Yeah.
so this was like that, but more violent and really quick. So it wasn't like constant shivers. It was my body went boom, and it set me up, and I didn't realize what happened at first. I thought, holy crap, that was weird, and I'm like, what just happened? And then it started dawning on me. It started dawning on me that I just completely put myself in the Lord's hands and asked for help in a way that I had never asked for anything before.
Yeah.
And immediately felt that, dude. And when I started realizing that, I just started crying. And it was this weird, peaceful cry. And from that moment, I knew I was going to be successful. It's crazy. Like, I feel 100% in my bones right now. Alcohol will never be a problem for me again. And it started immediately right there.
That's
Now,
cool.
it changed my path of faith too. Like, it strengthened my faith in God tenfold, because I had felt these tugs and pulls on my heart, and I had done these things that I recognized as God's work. I had never experienced anything like that, dude. That was undeniable for me, what happened to me. And I want to be clear for anybody that's going to listen to this, that didn't make my path completely easy. Like, I
Yeah.
still had them few days, probably 6 or 7 days where I didn't feel right. I was really grumpy. I think day 3 to 5 was really rough, because I wasn't getting any alcohol in me. And I still have times, almost 2 years later, where I want to drink. It's a situation that I used to enjoy drinking, and it's like, man, it'd be nice if I could do that. It's a shame that I can't do that. So it's not completely smooth sailing, but I have had a much easier path than most, and there's not a doubt in my mind why. And it's pretty crazy.
I myself, I still occasionally drink. You know, I can't understand the fullness of a truly sober person's thought, but I have a lot of friends that you probably know that are fully sober, and it's allowed me to understand like really how it affects an individual. Just like my cousin who was addicted to alcohol and narcotics for quite some time. Um, the blessing in that, and me and my cousin have talked about her alcoholism and other, you know, stuff she couldn't handle, was me watching her harm herself and struggle kept me away from certain things. You get
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
and I say this in the same respects of whenever you weren't able to control, and whether some people that were close to you during those times want to admit it or not, probably help somebody stay away from some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Your bad time was probably a blessing for somebody that you don't know. Like my cousin's bad times were a blessing for me.
Yeah. It's I kind of touched on it earlier, but I was so highly functioning as an alcoholic that
We all are. Let
no,
me hold that thought. For anybody out there to say they're not a alcoholic, if you drink more than once a week, you just function responsibly.
yeah,
There's no in between on that.
yeah. So the lifestyle I lived and the way that I drank, my wife was the only person that really knew I had a problem in my life,
Yeah.
period. My kids were, teenagers. Like I said, they're 18, 16, and almost 14 now. And I just quit less than 2 years ago. And they had no idea that I drank other than an occasional social outing. Uh, and my parents didn't realize, they knew that I drank, but they didn't have any clue I had a problem.
Yeah.
My sisters, once I did get sober and began talking about it, my sister said that, they could tell that I probably was going down a bad road. But they were so in tune with our family history and,
Yeah.
seeing the times that I would drink that wasn't quite normal for someone that probably didn't have a problem. So it didn't surprise them when I come out and said that I was an alcoholic and that I beat it. But like one of the toughest parts for me getting sober was coming out to my mom and dad and my kids.
Mm.
Those were two conversations that, and they were rough conversations. I hurt some people in those conversations, and I lost. Uh, I didn't lose respect from either group, but in my mind, and they'll tell me different, but they'll tell people that they gained respect and that my value went up to them. But in my mind, it felt like it had to go down.
Yeah.
I had to look weaker to them. I had to have lost something from the way they saw me, and so I dreaded those conversations and I knew I had to have them though. And the only reason why I knew I had to have them, because in the big scheme of things, I quit drinking. I never had to talk to my kids about it. I never had to tell them the details of my drinking problem. My parents, I didn't have to tell them. But the main reason why I put myself through that and had those uncomfortable conversations with them was so I could do stuff like this today and talk
Yeah.
to you about it. And hopefully people would hear about it and learn about it and maybe put themselves or somebody they love in check from hearing my story. And I knew I couldn't share my story without coming out and talking to them about it first.
For sure.
But yeah, so mine was, it blew my kids' minds.
Mm-hmm.
That they had no idea. And it's funny because they had only heard the term alcoholic, and their word association with alcoholic was those terrible things, those people that crash in cars, those people that cheat on their spouses, those people that lose their jobs, those people that beat on their spouse and their kids. That's in their mind what an alcoholic was. And when I told them that their daddy was an alcoholic, I seen the confusion and the fear, Corey, come over their face and their eyes.
Like, what the? Yeah.
So they was confused in their minds trying to figure out, okay, if my dad's an alcoholic, what are these things has he done? What am I not seeing? And seeing it was tough for me to go through, man. It's a little tough for me to talk about, but seeing that confusion and that fear in their eyes, and them questioning who I was as a person from who they thought I was devastating to me.
Yeah.
It 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 was it was painful for me to see that. I'm
Hmm.
so thankful for the courage that I had to go through that conversation. And then the later conversations that followed with each one of my girls, because at different ages, you got to discuss these things a little bit differently. So
100%.
my conversation, my conversation with my oldest was a lot different than the conversation I had with my youngest. But to have future conversations with them about the details of my functioning alcohol problem, why, how it became a problem, why it was a problem, and why I was making the decisions I was making, I think is going to end up being a very important part of their childhood and their growth into their later teenage years and early
Yeah.
20s, because I want them to understand that even somebody that they see as the strongest person in the world can fall victim to one of these substances if they're not careful. And I want them to understand that they were important enough to me for me to fight that demon and get past that problem. And if I want to be real honest with myself, I didn't do that. I didn't quit drinking for me. I quit drinking for my wife and my kids. And if it wasn't for them, I have a feeling that I'd still be drinking right now, and who
Yeah.
knows where I would be at in life. So thankful for them. But those were tough conversations, man. And if you're, you can go through that and not have those conversations, but it makes everything better in the end when you can be open and talk about these things. And part of my healing and part of my sobriety success is being able to talk about it and have conversations like we're having now.
Now, I've been noticing your shirt. Is that a thing? Is that like an athletic shirt, or is that something that helps you with your sobriety? Like
It
go
is.
one more, like as go one more day. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's actually nothing to do with sobriety, but one of the things that early on in sobriety, even after I had my incident with the Lord, is 24 at a time. A lot of people that go through programs and stuff, they
yeah,
go 24 at a time, and it's 24 hours at a time. And I even some people that I've consulted with and people that I have just had heartfelt conversations with, I tell them it doesn't even have to be 1 hour at a time. It can be a minute at a time, a second at a
yeah,
time. If you can hold on for one more of whatever it is, then you're winning. You haven't failed. If you can just hold on for one more second, one more minute. But the phrase "go one more" actually comes from his name's Nick Bear. He's a big YouTube guy. He owns a supplement company called BPN, Bear Performance Nutrition. So he runs a supplement line, successful business guy. He's in his 30s and he is a freak athlete. And he does all of these things that I'm interested in. He does, crazy fast marathons. He does ultra marathons. He's been a bodybuilder, a power lifter. He's done physique competitions. So he makes these outrageous goals that such a small percentage of people can achieve, and he smashes them all, and he films everything, and so he's been a huge influence on my physical transformation that I've made. And he started using the phrase "go one more." It actually evolved from one more rep, one more run, whatever,
yeah.
and somewhere it morphed into "go one more," and he uses it, and this is one of his shirts. I bought this from BPN. The phrase has become something I use daily and I use with my kids, and they tease me about it sometimes. I hashtag it on all my posts that I make, "go one more." And for me, it's, you know, uh, when I started Project Me, that's what I call my wellness journey. And I started that about 6 months before I ever quit drinking. Really started working on myself mentally, physically, spiritually. And somewhere in the middle of that, I decided that I was going to run an ultra marathon, and it's so crazy. I've never ran before. I'd never even ran a 5K. I was 290 pounds when I made that decision, and had never ran. And I picked up this "Go One More" phrase, man, because I had to. It was the only way that I was going to be able to train for such an extraordinary physical feat, especially coming from where I was physically at the time, was to get the mindset of "Go One More." And it's became a staple in my life, man. I write it on my shoes, my running shoes. I think about it all the time. So that's awesome that you noticed the shirt. I may or may not have worn that on purpose for this, hoping it would come up.
I just, I pay attention to a lot of stuff that a lot of people wouldn't. And I just seen that in our conversation that we've had so far today, man. I'm like, man, I wonder if that motherfucker wore that for that. Like, I gotta ask.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think that somebody could relate it to that easily. And like I said, 24 at a time is a huge phrase and motivation for people in the sobriety world. It could easily be "Go One More." I haven't used it for that. All mine's been about physical, because I've had, such a just crazy physical journey throughout what I call Project Me. So it's coming up on 2 years. Project Me will be 2 years old in July.
Oh yeah.
And still going strong. I'm still nowhere near where I'm going to be mentally, physically, or spiritually. I hope Project Me never ends, man. It's completely changed my life.
Right. So a few more things before we end this great conversation that we had. Sober you, if you could have a conversation with the non-sober you, non-sober Craig, like we are, what would you tell him?
I think that I would tell him to really check his ego. I think I would tell him that he is not safe from falling victim of the disease of addiction, especially given his family history.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would tell him that he's playing with fire. And I think I would tell him that you can actually have a good time, whether it's with your boys or with your family or at a ball game, without being intoxicated. And I think that I would tell him that there are a million other ways to learn to cope with anxiety and stress. And right now, I would say, you know what, dude, you are coping the wrong way. And there are other ways to cope with this stuff and live a normal life. And I would just encourage him to be open-minded and realize where that path was taking him.
Definitely. So before we end this great conversation, I want to touch on one thing and then ask you one more question, then we'll end it. The reason why, if you notice the name of my podcast, the reason why it's called Conversations with Corey is I didn't want to be limited to just sports, because if I had a name with anything sports related into it, I would automatically, in a person's mind on the outside world, limit myself. I would limit listeners and all that, It's for me, known as a sports guy, it's pretty cool to be able to hold these conversations and be fluent with it. It allows me to be proud of myself and lets me know that I'm doing something right, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That I for one, kudos to you for putting so much thought into your branding, because it opened up a lot of markets for you, and I've really enjoyed watching you grow this thing.
Appreciate that.
I've been kind of, well, not so closet fan. I think you've known that I've been pulling for you for a while, but there was a time period watching at the beginning, I didn't reach out and wasn't as vocal about how much I was enjoying watching you. I love watching somebody put their heart and soul into something, and then you see it, and a lot of people don't realize that it's actually improving and climbing and getting better. And then just one day you see something big like your NFL combine or your conversations with U of L athletics, and then all these people realize, oh man, he's doing something. Well, it was cool for me to start watching this show early.
Yeah.
And, see the work and the time that you put in, and I don't see everything, but obviously you wouldn't be going through what you're experiencing now had you not been putting the work in. So it's cool, man. And so I thought it was awesome when you brought up maybe, sitting down and having a conversation with Corey. So it was cool. But you're kudos for your branding and thinking about your marketing early in this, because you're just getting going, dude. And as this thing grows,
and what people don't realize is I've been at this stuff for 4.5 years. I thought about that stuff, like you said, early. One thing that I've learned in life, especially with what I've been doing with this podcast and sports page, worst thing you do is hamper yourself. And I just embedded it in my effing brain, bro, that if I include anything with sports related into the title or name of the podcast, I would hamper myself tremendously.
I'm glad that you realized that. I'm glad you kind of, strategized away from that, because you're going to have the respect in the sports area. And so it's cool to see that you'll be able to open all these other doors with whatever conversations with Corey that come out and drop. Yeah. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. Last thing. Well, two things. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourself as much as I have. And then two, how does Craig want to be remembered? When Craig's time on earth is done, how does Craig want to be remembered?
That's a great question. I've been in some leadership trainings and done an exercise where you build your legacy statement. And basically your legacy is how you want to be remembered. And there's so many things I think that I would like my legacy to be. And that has changed over, the last 20 years of my life. I think it'll change from now to where you ask me that in 20 years from now. But right now, as we said today, I want to be remembered as a strong Christian man that was a absolute fierce protector of the people he loved, that refused to be average at anything. I'm kind of weird. I don't have to be the best at anything, but I absolutely refuse to be average at anything I do. I want people to recognize that. I want people to also remember me as someone who, no matter how tough and rugged they looked on the outside, that had a humongous heart and love for people and was compassionate and graceful. Because as I've evolved and been able to fight my ego, I've realized the value of compassion and grace. And they're way more valuable to me at this stage in my life than somebody thinking I'm the tough guy. And so as I want to be known as that fierce protector of my family, I also want to be known as that person that truly cares about people, that truly loves to help people.
Yeah.
And someone that has just enough of a screw loose to push my personal physical limits far past what average people can. And that's kind of in a nutshell where that would lay, as you ask it today.
Craig, I want to thank you for your time. Look forward to chatting with you again soon, man. You take care of yourself, brother.
All right, Corey. Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Always, bro. Take care.
All right.